Rylan Voss stepped carefully onto the icy surface of the remote planet, the wind biting at his face through the thick visor of his helmet. His shuttle had been damaged in the landing, and he needed to make repairs before the next storm hit. The landscape was silent except for the hiss of the wind and the distant creaking of frozen cliffs. He had expected loneliness here, but what he saw beyond the ridge made him pause. A creature moved slowly across the frozen plain, its scales shining almost white in the weak sunlight. At first, Rylan thought it was a trick of the light, but as he watched, he realized it was a dragon, an albino dragon, alone, wounded, and wary. Its long wings dragged slightly along the ice and one leg bore a deep gash. Rylan's heart tightened. Most humans would have fled or called for backup, but he felt something else. Empathy. This creature was not a threat. It was suffering, exiled from its kin, forced to survive alone in a harsh, frozen world. He crouched low behind a ridge, observing carefully. The dragon, whose amber eyes flicked toward him periodically, was tense, muscles coiled like springs. It had clearly learned to distrust others, a necessity for survival after being cast out. Rylan knew he had to move slowly. One wrong step could scare it away or worse. He removed a small pack from his shoulder, producing a few rations of nutrient paste he carried for emergencies. Carefully he placed it on a flat patch of ice and stepped back, staying low and still. The dragon froze, head lowering slightly as it sniffed the air. Hunger battled caution, and for a long moment, it stayed still, eyes locked on Rylan. Then, cautiously, it approached the food, tail flicking nervously. Rylan whispered softly, though he doubted the dragon could understand words. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I only want to help." The words felt inadequate, but his calm tone seemed to matter more than the meaning. The dragon hesitated, then began to eat slowly, never taking its eyes off him. After a while, Rylan inched closer, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He noticed more injuries than he had first seen. Torn scales along the wings, bruises across the flanks, and frostbite beginning on its extremities. The dragon flinched each time he made a small move, but it did not flee. He realized that it had been exiled for reasons unknown to him, likely a misunderstanding among its own kind, and had been surviving in isolation for far too long. Survival alone had made it cautious, intelligent, and wary of all life. Rylan spent hours observing it, noting its habits and weaknesses. The dragon would huff when it shifted weight, stomp when it was unsure, and its amber eyes seemed to calculate his intentions at every step. Patience, he knew, was the key. He could not rush this creature. Trust had to be earned, slowly, with care and consistency. He waited, letting the dragon eat in peace, occasionally shifting slightly to show he meant no harm. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ice, Rylan decided it was time to try a closer approach. He knelt low, making his presence as small as possible, and spoke in soft tones. "You don't have to be alone anymore. I can help you." The dragon shifted slightly, tense but curious. It sniffed the air near his hand, hesitating only a moment before drawing back. That small gesture was progress, a recognition that this human might be different from the others it had learned to fear. Night approached and the temperature dropped sharply. Rylan knew that the dragon could not survive the freezing winds much longer without some form of shelter. He quickly examined the nearby rocks and ice formations, finding a small alcove that could provide partial cover. He gestured gently toward it, hoping the dragon would understand. It watched him carefully, then slowly moved in the direction he indicated, wings folded close, tail dragging. Step by step, it followed his guidance, testing his intentions. By the time darkness fell completely, the dragon was resting in the alcove, curling slightly to conserve warmth. Rylan stayed nearby, keeping a careful watch. He understood that this was only the first step, earning the dragon's trust, offering protection, and proving that human kindness could exist even in a world where fear and suspicion ruled. He whispered softly, "We'll get through this. You're not alone anymore." The dragon's eyes flickered toward him, reflecting the weak light, and then slowly closed in what seemed like cautious acceptance. Rylan used the time to make minor repairs to his shuttle, keeping one eye on the dragon. He gathered small rocks and ice fragments to build a windbreak, giving the creature some protection from the harsh winds. Even in its sleep, the dragon's intelligence seemed apparent. Its breathing was steady, its posture alert enough to react to danger, yet relaxed enough to allow care. Rylan marveled at its resilience, realizing that patience and empathy were as important as any physical aid he could offer. By the time he finally sat back to rest, Rylan knew that their journey together had only just begun. The dragon, once lonely, exiled, and wounded, had allowed a human to enter its life. Trust, fragile and tentative, had been established. The icy winds blew around them, but for the first time the dragon was not completely alone. And Rylan, human among alien wilderness, understood the weight of responsibility he had taken on, not to dominate but to protect, heal and guide. As the stars emerged in the night sky, he whispered one last thought into the quiet alcove: "Tomorrow we begin again. Together." The dragon stirred slightly, a soft huff escaping its nostrils. In that subtle motion, Rylan saw the promise of trust, hope, and the beginning of a bond that could change both their lives forever. Alone they had survived, together they had a chance at something far greater: freedom, safety and understanding. Rylan woke to the faint glow of the twin suns creeping over the icy horizon. The albino dragon, Leora, stirred beside him, wings slightly tucked, eyes watching every movement. She had spent the night curled into the small alcove he had built, but her breathing was uneven, a sign of lingering pain and exhaustion. Rylan carefully unpacked his kit of tools, nutrient paste and healing compounds. Today he would begin the slow work of helping her recover step by step. He approached cautiously, keeping his movements deliberate and calm. Leora's amber eyes followed him, muscles tense, tail flicking nervously. Rylan knelt a few feet away, speaking softly. "I won't hurt you. I only want to help." The dragon tilted her head slightly as if measuring his words against instinct. Hunger had made her bold enough to stay close, but caution ruled her every motion. Rylan began by cleaning the dirt and ice from the small cuts along her wings and legs. He used his tools gently, working around bruises and torn scales. Leora flinched at first, but he paused, letting her adjust, speaking softly. "It's okay. We go slow." He applied a nutrient paste to her wounds and the dragon sniffed, then cautiously allowed him to rub it in. Each tiny flinch, each hesitant breath, was a sign of trust slowly forming. Hours passed as Rylan worked with care. He made small braces from broken parts of his shuttle and local materials to support her damaged wings. Leora huffed, uneasy at first, then allowed him to adjust them. She flexed her wings carefully, testing the support. Rylan watched her reactions, learning what caused discomfort and what offered relief. Patience and observation were as important as the physical repairs. Intelligence and understanding were the tools he relied on most. He offered more nutrient paste, placing it a short distance away. Leora approached slowly, sniffed and began to eat. Rylan remained still, observing, noting her patterns, her hesitations and her responses. Trust was not built in moments but in repeated small gestures. Feeding, repairing, speaking softly, moving carefully. He realized that each act of care was a lesson in patience, empathy, and the quiet power of kindness. As the suns climbed higher, Rylan explored the nearby area to gather additional materials for a better shelter. Ice slabs, rocks, and broken panels could be arranged to shield Leora from the harsh winds. While he worked, the dragon watched from a short distance, wings folded, eyes alert. She had not come close yet, but she did not flee. That alone was progress. Rylan spoke softly, "I'm building something to keep you safe. When it's ready you'll see." After arranging a protective alcove, he returned to Leora, kneeling at a safe distance. Slowly he approached, offering a hand near her snout, letting her sniff and gauge him. She hesitated, then moved slightly closer, not touching him but acknowledging his presence. Small, deliberate movements like this were victories, signs that the dragon's fear was beginning to wane in the face of consistent, gentle care. He used soft materials to create a bed near the alcove, padding it with fragments of his supplies and natural resources. Leora observed, occasionally shifting closer, wings flexing as if testing the stability of the arrangement. Rylan spoke gently, "This is yours. A place to rest without fear." The dragon lowered her head slightly, a subtle gesture of acceptance. He smiled faintly, realizing that human intelligence combined with empathy could create comfort and security even in a harsh alien environment. Midday came and the wind grew stronger. Rylan encouraged Leora to move into the new alcove, showing her the way. She hesitated, then stepped carefully, testing the space. Once inside, she crouched slightly, wings folded close. He left nutrient paste nearby and stepped back, letting her explore at her own pace. Trust, he knew, could not be rushed. Each small action mattered more than words or gestures of force. As the afternoon passed, Leora began to show subtle signs of curiosity. She sniffed at his tools, nudged small items with her snout, and flexed her wings without resistance. Rylan spoke softly, praising her, "You're learning. You're safe here." The dragon's amber eyes reflected intelligence and awareness, acknowledging that kindness and patience had created an environment where she could begin to heal. Night approached and the temperatures dropped sharply. Rylan lit a small, controlled heater, careful not to frighten her. Leora shifted closer, wings brushing against his side slightly, a tentative sign of trust. He watched her breathe, ensuring she was comfortable, and whispered, "We'll take it day by day. Together we'll get through this." The dragon's subtle huff of acknowledgement reassured him that the bond between them was growing stronger. By the time the twin moons rose above the icy cliffs, Leora was resting in the alcove, less tense, wings partially relaxed and amber eyes calm. Rylan sat beside her, reflecting on the day. Acts of care had done more than heal injuries. They had begun to repair fear, loneliness, and distrust. The dragon, once exiled and wary of every life form, had taken the first steps toward trusting a human. As he drifted into a brief rest, Rylan whispered softly into the quiet alcove, "Tomorrow we continue. Healing is more than medicine, it's trust, patience, and understanding." The dragon's soft huff seemed to answer him. In the cold, silent world, two unlikely companions had begun a journey of recovery, trust, and mutual understanding. Through acts of care, patience, and intelligence, human and dragon had formed a bond that could grow into something far greater than either could survive alone. The next morning, Rylan woke to the soft shimmer of sunlight on the ice. Leora, the albino dragon, had shifted closer overnight, her body curled around the small alcove he had built. Her wings, though still weak, stretched slowly, testing the air, and her amber eyes followed every movement he made. Rylan knew today would be about more than healing injuries, it would be about forming a deeper bond, earning trust that could last a lifetime. He began by offering her nutrient paste again, placing it a short distance from her resting spot. Leora approached cautiously, pausing frequently to sniff the air and gauge his intentions. Rylan stayed low, moving slowly, speaking softly. "You don't have to worry. I won't hurt you." His words, calm and steady, were accompanied by deliberate gestures showing he meant no harm. Each step forward was small, careful, designed to reinforce trust rather than frighten her. After she ate, Rylan examined her wings, testing their strength gently with his hands. Leora tensed at first, then relaxed slightly as he adjusted his touch to avoid causing pain. He spoke softly, explaining his actions in a way he knew she could sense, even if she could not understand words. "I'm helping you move better. You'll be stronger soon." She blinked slowly as if acknowledging him. That simple gesture was more than words could convey, it was understanding. The day passed slowly, filled with small exercises. Rylan guided Leora through careful stretches, encouraging her to move step by step. He demonstrated movements himself, showing how to test muscles and balance, and she mirrored him with surprising intelligence. Each success, no matter how small, was celebrated with gentle words and calm gestures. Trust, he realized, was not given, it was earned through patience, consistency, and respect. As they worked, Leora began exploring the alcove more freely. She sniffed his tools, nudged small rocks, and flexed her wings without fear of sudden movements. Rylan noticed her amber eyes flicking toward him frequently, as if watching for guidance and approval. He spoke softly, praising her. "You're learning. You're brave." The dragon huffed quietly in response, a subtle acknowledgement of the growing connection between them. Rylan decided it was time to test her confidence. He guided her to a small ridge nearby, a gentle slope covered in frost and ice. "We'll try moving a little higher," he said. Leora hesitated, wings folding tightly, tail flicking nervously. Rylan remained calm, kneeling low and encouraging her slowly. Step by step, she followed his guidance, adjusting her footing carefully. Her trust in him allowed her to take risks she might never have dared alone. Halfway up the ridge, Leora stumbled slightly. Rylan reached out, steadying her with a light touch. She looked at him with wide eyes, not angry or fearful, but curious. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here. You can trust me." She hesitated for a moment, then shifted closer, letting him guide her again. That small act of reliance was a breakthrough, the first real sign that a bond of trust had formed between human and dragon. As the suns reached their peak, Rylan noticed distant tracks in the ice. Someone, or something, had been nearby recently. He paused, signaling Leora to stay alert. She responded immediately, lowering her head, wings tense but ready. They watched together, silent and still, each learning from the other. Rylan realized that trust extended beyond comfort. It was also about preparation and mutual protection. The bond they were forming was not just emotional, it was practical, necessary for survival. After confirming the area was safe, Rylan guided Leora back to the alcove. They spent the afternoon exploring small sections of the nearby terrain together, testing her wings with careful glides and encouraging movement across icy rocks. Leora began to respond to his gestures more quickly, anticipating his guidance. Her amber eyes glimmered with awareness, intelligence, and a growing sense of safety. Rylan smiled faintly. This was what he had hoped for, a connection that combined trust, learning, and mutual respect. Evening fell and the temperature dropped sharply. Rylan set up a small heater, careful to keep it at a safe distance. Leora moved closer, wings folding comfortably around her body. He offered more nutrient paste, placing it nearby, and she ate without hesitation. That small act of reliance, day after day, was evidence that the bond they were building was solid and enduring. Trust, patience, and consistent care had transformed fear into cautious confidence. As the twin moons rose, painting the icy cliffs in silver light, Rylan sat beside Leora, reflecting on the day. She had moved more freely, responded to his guidance, and allowed herself to rely on him. The connection between them was stronger than it had been yesterday, a combination of empathy, patience, and understanding. Rylan knew that trust was fragile, but he also knew that the foundation they had laid would allow them to face challenges together. Before resting, Rylan whispered softly, "We're learning together. You can trust me and I'll always be here." Leora shifted closer, tail brushing his side gently. Her amber eyes reflected intelligence, awareness, and the faintest hint of gratitude. In that moment, human and dragon were no longer two separate beings. They were companions bound by patience, care, and the promise of mutual protection. Night settled over the icy landscape and Rylan kept watch, alert but calm. He understood that today had been more than physical healing. It had been about creating a connection that would endure trials, danger, and the uncertainties of the universe. Trust had been earned, bond had been formed, and the future, though uncertain, held promise. Together, human and dragon had taken the next step toward freedom, safety, and a shared life built on understanding. The morning air was crisp, and the icy cliffs glimmered under the rising suns. Rylan Voss packed his small repair kit and checked the alcove where Leora, the albino dragon, rested. She stretched her wings carefully, testing their strength, amber eyes alert and curious. Today would be different. He had sensed movement in the distance yesterday, faint traces of another human presence, or perhaps scavengers drawn by the unusual creature living on the frozen planet. Their trust would be tested and courage would be required. As Rylan and Leora moved across the icy plain, he kept low, watching for any signs of danger. He had taught her to respond to his gestures and subtle commands, and now they moved as a team. Step by step, Leora's confidence grew, wings flexing lightly, claws gripping the ice with steady balance. Rylan felt a surge of pride. Their bond was no longer fragile, it was becoming a partnership. But the approaching threat reminded him that even trust could not replace vigilance. A sudden noise broke the quiet. Snow shifted unnaturally and faint mechanical whirs reached his ears. Rylan froze, signaling Leora to crouch low. The dragon obeyed instinctively, lowering her head, wings tucked close. Through the snow haze, a small group of explorers emerged, scanning the terrain with devices that detected movement and heat. These were not friendly explorers. Rylan could see it in their posture and weapons. They were here to capture or harm the dragon. Rylan whispered, "Stay calm. We can handle this together." Leora's amber eyes met his, understanding his intention. Her muscles coiled, ready to respond. Rylan assessed the terrain quickly. Behind them was a ridge with scattered ice formations, a perfect place to hide and guide the dragon while they observed the approaching threat. He motioned for her to follow, and she moved carefully, trusting his lead. As the explorers advanced, one threw a scanner that beeped aggressively near Leora's position. She tensed, a low hiss escaping her throat. Rylan knelt behind a rock, signaling for patience. "Wait, observe," he whispered. They had the advantage of knowledge and careful planning. Leora's instincts were sharp, but his guidance gave her options she could not see alone. Courage was not just strength, it was intelligence under pressure. He guided her along a hidden path between jagged ice formations, using small gestures to direct her. Step by step, Leora moved with grace, avoiding traps and obstacles. One of the explorers fired a net launcher. The net sailed past, harmlessly snagging on a distant rock. Rylan exhaled quietly. He had taught Leora to watch his signals, and she had responded perfectly. Each small success reinforced their bond and strengthened her trust in him. The explorers began to split up, attempting to surround them. Rylan realized they needed to create a diversion. He picked up a fragment of ice and tossed it onto a distant slope, making it tumble loudly. Leora understood the signal instantly, shifting toward a safer path he had identified earlier. Together they moved silently, using the terrain to their advantage. Courage, Rylan thought, was not about reckless confrontation. It was about thinking, acting, and trusting one another. Halfway across the plain, Leora stumbled on a slippery patch of ice. Rylan was immediately at her side, steadying her with a light touch. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here." Her amber eyes locked onto his and she adjusted, taking careful steps again. The small act of reliance was a demonstration of their shared courage. Alone they might have panicked. Together they were deliberate, measured, and ready. The explorers' frustration grew as they failed to anticipate the dragon's movements. Rylan led Leora to a small alcove near the base of a cliff, providing partial cover. He quickly arranged snow and ice to create obstacles, forcing the explorers to slow their advance. The dragon crouched beside him, wings folding close, tail curled but alert. Rylan spoke softly, "We can do this. Stay close and trust me." Leora responded with a low hiss, a mix of alertness and acknowledgement. Hours passed as they evaded the pursuers. Rylan used his knowledge of the terrain, while Leora's keen instincts allowed her to anticipate sudden shifts in snow and ice. The explorers eventually gave up, unable to track them further. Rylan exhaled, relief mixing with pride. Leora's body relaxed slightly, wings flexing freely now that the immediate danger had passed. Courage, he realized, was not the absence of fear, it was moving forward together despite it. As the suns dipped toward the horizon, Rylan guided Leora back to the alcove where they had first formed their bond. He prepared nutrient paste and checked her minor injuries, ensuring that the exertion of evasion had not caused harm. Leora ate cautiously but steadily, tail curling slightly around him in a rare gesture of comfort and trust. Rylan smiled faintly, understanding that their shared experience had deepened their connection. Night fell, painting the icy cliffs in silver and shadow. The danger had passed, but the lesson remained clear. Courage was shared, built on trust, intelligence, and empathy. Rylan whispered softly to Leora, "We faced fear together and we prevailed. You can trust me and I'll always be here for you." The dragon huffed softly in acknowledgement, curling closer to the alcove, wings folded, eyes glowing with awareness. As he settled beside her for the night, Rylan reflected on the day. They had faced threat and danger, yet together they had succeeded without violence, using patience, observation, and mutual understanding. The bond between human and dragon was stronger than ever, built through acts of care, guidance, and courage under pressure. He knew the next steps of their journey would be harder, but tonight they had proven that together they could survive anything. The twin moons rose above the icy plains, casting a pale glow over human and dragon. Rylan kept watch, alert but calm, while Leora rested nearby. Trust had been tested, courage had been proven, and the foundation for their shared future had been firmly established. They had survived the first true test, and now the path forward, freedom, healing, and recognition, was within reach. The morning sun bathed the icy cliffs in pale gold as Rylan Voss and Leora, the albino dragon, prepared to leave the alcove that had sheltered them through storms, hunger, and danger. Leora stretched her wings fully, testing their strength. Each movement was smooth, controlled, and confident, far from the hesitant motions she had made when Rylan first found her. Amber eyes flicked toward him, calm and trusting. Today they would leave the frozen isolation behind and step into a larger world. Rylan packed his tools and rations, leaving small markers to guide any future travelers away from the sanctuary. He gestured for Leora to follow, and she stepped carefully, testing the icy terrain with steady claws. Her wings flexed as she lifted slightly with each stride, gaining confidence. They moved together toward the open plains, where the wind was stronger, the landscape harsher, but the path to freedom clear. As they traversed the plain, Rylan noticed distant tracks in the snow, signs of scavengers or explorers who might have followed the dragon's trail. He signaled Leora to stay low, crouching beside a small ridge. She obeyed instinctively, lowering her head and tucking her wings close. Rylan studied the approaching figures. They were hunters hoping to capture or harm a rare creature. He knew they had to act carefully. Leora was healed, but danger remained. Courage and intelligence would guide them, not rash actions. Rylan led her through hidden paths and ice formations, using terrain to mask their movement. Leora followed his gestures precisely, adapting her steps to the uneven surface, tail swaying for balance, wings flexing lightly. The hunters moved past, unaware of the dragon's presence. Each small success reinforced Leora's trust in Rylan and proved that intelligence, patience and courage were as strong as claws or fire. By midday they reached a vast canyon that opened to a hidden valley, shielded from scanners and casual explorers. Rylan pointed toward it and Leora stepped forward, wings spread slightly, nostrils flaring with the scent of fresh air. She paused at the edge, looking back at Rylan as if asking silently for permission. "It's safe," he whispered. "You can go freely now." With a gentle nod, she launched into the air, wings catching the wind. She soared above the canyon, tail and wings steady, amber eyes bright with exhilaration. Rylan watched, heart swelling. The dragon he had found alone, exiled, and injured was now strong, free and trusting. He had guided her not with force but with patience, care and understanding. She circled above, dipping and gliding, testing her power and the freedom she had not known in years. Each movement demonstrated strength regained, confidence restored and trust earned. After several circuits, Leora landed lightly beside him, wings folding gracefully. She nudged his shoulder gently, a gesture of acknowledgement and affection. Rylan smiled, understanding that the bond between human and dragon was complete, not dependent on fear or obligation, but built on mutual respect and care. She had survived because of him, but he had also learned from her. Intelligence, observation and empathy could overcome any challenge. They explored the valley together, discovering streams, natural shelters and open skies for flight. Leora moved with grace, wings flexing, muscles strong, yet attentive to Rylan's presence. He guided her to safe spots, showed her hidden corners and reinforced boundaries where danger might lie. Her amber eyes followed him constantly, not in fear, but in recognition of his guidance and protection. Freedom was not just physical, it was trust, awareness, and the understanding that she could rely on someone without fear. As night approached, Rylan prepared a resting area near a warm geothermal spring. He gathered smooth rocks and snow to create a comfortable space, placing nutrient paste nearby. Leora approached cautiously, testing the surroundings, then settled beside the spring. She lowered her head slightly, amber eyes softening, wings folded but relaxed. The dragon, once exiled and alone, had found safety, companionship, and the chance to thrive. Rylan sat beside her, watching the twin moons rise above the valley. The landscape glowed faintly, ice reflecting silver light. He whispered softly, "You're free now, Leora. No one can harm you here. You've earned this." The dragon responded with a soft, acknowledging huff, nudging his side gently. The bond between them was clear. Mutual respect, trust and understanding had replaced fear, loneliness and pain. In the following days, Leora tested her strength further. She soared over cliffs, glided through valleys and practiced controlled dives into the streams. Rylan observed, guiding when necessary, praising her successes and reinforcing caution when danger arose. Each flight was a celebration of regained strength and freedom. Travelers glimpsing her in the sky could see intelligence, power, and grace, a living testament to the human who had earned her trust and guided her safely. As the sun set on the horizon, Rylan reflected on the journey. He had found a creature abandoned by its own kind, fearful and wounded, yet intelligent and capable. Through patience, care, and courage, he had transformed fear into trust, injury into strength, and exile into freedom. The dragon's amber eyes, glowing softly in the moonlight, were a constant reminder of the power of empathy, understanding, and human intelligence in shaping the universe. Leora curled beside him for the night, her wings folding around her body, tail brushing gently against his side. Rylan whispered one last thought into the quiet valley, "We faced fear together. We survived, we healed, and now you are free. We've shown what humans can do with patience, courage, and kindness." The dragon's soft huff echoed his sentiment, a sound of recognition, acceptance, and companionship. Above them, stars twinkled in the vast sky, and for the first time the albino dragon, once exiled and alone, knew safety, trust, and the freedom to soar. Rylan understood that this was the true victory, not power, not conquest, but the creation of bonds strong enough to protect, guide, and inspire. They had both found something rare and precious: companionship, respect, and a shared place in the universe where courage and kindness had triumphed. In the quiet of the hidden valley, human and dragon rested together. Freedom had been earned, trust had been cemented, and the world beyond might now look at them differently. Leora's exile had ended, not with force or fire, but with intelligence, patience, and one human's unwavering kindness. The bond they shared promised a future full of flight, safety, and recognition. A story of courage and trust that would echo in the stars.